Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anatomy of an Adaptation. This is a podcast that aims to compare classic novels with their cinematic adaptations. I'm your host, Nicolo Grasso, and welcome to 2026, the new season, the new year of the podcast. And we're starting off great style, in a great way, talking about a recent, beloved 2025 release. And of course, today I'm joined by the great Hilary White, just to start off on the right foot. How are you doing, Hilary? Good to have you back on the podcast.
I'm doing very well, and I look forward to talking about this.
Me too. And I'm very happy that today it's only just the two of us. This is not going to be a 3-hour epic conversation as it was with Frankenstein. You were not scared off by that, thankfully, last time. And of course, yes, as you can all see from the title of the episode, we're starting off the year talking about what at this point probably has gotten a lot of Academy Award nominations. We're pre-recording this before they come out, but of course today we're talking about Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, which is not a direct adaptation of a book, but it is heavily inspired by one. Something we've not yet done on the podcast, so this is going to be a very, very interesting conversation because, of course, today we're not just talking about One Battle After Another, we're also talking about Thomas Pynchon's Vineland.
Rise and shine.
Hi. What's up? What's up, homie? It's me again, Bob Ferguson. I don't know if you remember, but we spoke earlier on the phone. I think we had a little misunderstanding. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I was trying to get the rendezvous point for my daughter,
Right.
Willa.
If you can't answer what time is it, I cannot give you the rendezvous point. This is a key tenet of the rebellion. I'm surprised you can't name it. I don't know if you are who you say you are.
Okay. Well, look, maybe I can give you some information, and then you give me some information, all right? We'll just share a little information. My name is Bob Ferguson. I don't know if you've ever heard of me, all right? I was part of French 75 for years and years, all right? They used to call me Ghetto Pat, Rocket Man, stuff like that. Only problem is I fried my brain since then, man. I have abused drugs and alcohol for the past 30 years, man. I'm a drug and alcohol lover, and I cannot remember for the life of me or the life of my only child the answer to your question. What time is it?
8:15.
Now, I need this rendezvous point. You understand what I'm saying? I need it.
I understand. And the question is, what time is it?
If you don't give me the rendezvous point, I swear to God, I will hunt you down and stick a loaded hot piece of dynamite right up your.
This is not the first time on this podcast that we have talked about Pynchon and PTA, because way back in the old configuration of the podcast, the good Ewan Gledo and I were joined by Jack Keating, lovely film lover and Pynchon lover, to talk about Inherent Vice. And back then, One Battle After Another had not yet been announced. And then the movie was starting to take shape. PTA had talked over the years how he really wanted to adapt this book, which was released almost 20 years prior to Inherent Vice coming out, which was in 2009. And finally, here we are. He made it. Or did he? We'll get to it. Hilary, I know this is your first time, correct me if I'm wrong, reading Pynchon. Just generally, before we even dive into the book, which this could, like, we could have a 6-hour conversation just trying to unwrap everything that happens in the book, which we will not do for our sake and for the listeners' sake. But what was it like reading Pynchon for the first time? I'm very curious about this.
Well, I was just taking notes that I do need to listen to that Inherent Vice episode because you had someone who knew a lot more about Pynchon than, say, I do. So I guess the way I should begin this is saying I was aware of who Pynchon was. I knew he was an important writer. I hadn't read any of his books yet. So I had the experience of going into this book completely blind, not knowing what to expect. And everything about it was just so discombobulating. Like I couldn't, I think I told you before we recorded this in another conversation, I said I had to just keep restarting the first chapter over and over because I thought I'm not understanding what's happening. And it took me a while to get into the rhythms or just kind of fully accepting and letting it wash over me. Kind of like, it's like you can't fight the tide. The tide is just going to keep coming in, and you're just going to have to keep holding your breath and taking in reams of information. That's a lot of what this book is. So, but this was your second book, or how many have you read at this point?
It's only my second Pynchon. He is intimidating, to say the least, as you've experienced yourself just now. I remember I really loved, actually, Inherent Vice when we read it for the podcast, which is a book that I got even before I actually even had this podcast in mind, back in 2019 when I was in uni. And I knew of his reputation because it's hard not to know it. I think especially his novel Gravity's Rainbow together with Infinite Jest, they're like those two colossal of like hipster. You get a bit high and you just like read and read and you get lost in it. Those books have this type of reputation of being incredibly dense, incredibly long. Of course, Infinite Jest is not Pynchon. Just I know this before people comment. I know it's David Foster Wallace.
But it's in that pantheon. Like yeah, you mentioned Gravity's Rainbow, and I think like in Confederacy of Dunces, and
Yeah.
there's a specific canon of literature that I'm kind of left out of because it's aimed, or it's really important to a very specific type of white dude. And this is my first experience with that. And I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I came into this and I was kicking and screaming and I hated it and thought it was pretentious. It's not really my thing. But I ended up going into like Pynchon has his own subreddit and there's like a Pynchon wiki. And I came across a lot of conflicting opinions about this novel. Some said like, oh, this is his most accessible novel. And some people said like it was impossible to read. So these are coming from his fans. So it's even polarizing among people who love him. So I just knew like whatever I was thinking, it would fall in line with people who really like him as well. So I didn't feel too bad about it.
No, not at all, honestly. It was my same problem getting into Vineland, because I actually talked about this with someone else who is a big Pynchon lover, and he told me, like, oh, yeah, it's like lesser Pynchon, almost downplaying it. And that's the thing, like, you have not yet read Inherent Vice. I would recommend you do. I would be shocked if you told me that it's less accessible than Vineland. Because everyone was telling me like, oh yeah, Vineland's like lesser Pynchon. I think I was reading some of the reviews at the time, even were calling it like Pynchon light. This was not an easy read. I'll just like straight out say it. It's a chunky book. It's a dense book. There's so much happening, so many characters, so many events, so many jumps in time, space, genres even. It's a book that's set in 1984 Reagan America, and it's also a book that has UFO mentions. It has almost zombies in it.
Yep.
It's a trip. It's a trip in a way that, like you said, and I fully agree, you just have to let yourself go while reading this. Maybe it's offending to some people who actually do love to overanalyze and dig deep into all of the references and all of the different subplots, because boy are there subplots in this book. Are there characters that you're going to focus on for one chapter and then they're just going to vanish for the rest of the story. But that's part of the charm, in a way, of Vineland, because at the core of it you do have this story, right, of an ex-revolutionary single father who has his daughter, and there's this government official from the past that's coming back to hunt him down. He was together with a woman who betrayed the resistance, and now she's also conflicted with a family of her own, trying to right her wrongs after she was a double agent. On its own, like already everything that happens with the story of let me just double check the names, Zoe Wheeler, Prairie, and Frenzy Gates, is enough to carry a 300-400 page novel that can get complex. And this is just a surface level narrative here, because then you get ninjas, you get travels to Japan, you get the mafia, you get talks about politics, about Hollywood. There's so much about the film industry in this book. It's overwhelming, in a way that for the most part, I felt like I was on the right wavelength with it, just kind of like almost blindly accepting where Pynchon was taking me, having fun at the craziness of it. But it takes a toll on you. Just
Yeah, I agree. I think that the aspect of his writing I could embrace was like how absurdly funny it was. There would just be sometimes they throw out references to things that don't exist. And I mean, I would recommend, I think it's part of the Pynchon wiki or the core of it, where if you want to read it, if you're reading the book, they do have like annotations. So anytime there's a pop culture reference or something you might not know, it'll be on the website and you can figure out what it is. I think especially if you're born after 1990, I think it's probably really, really hard to know some of the things that he's throwing out there.
or if you're not American,
Or
just
if
some
you're not
things are not
American,
part
yeah,
of your of
exactly.
our zeitgeist here in Europe, in Italy, let alone.
Yeah, it's very challenging. And then, like I said, there's fake things that he's throwing in there too, like films that don't exist or projects that people have done that you know aren't real. And
Songs.
yeah, songs, all sorts of stuff. I think there was. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Spotify list out there where someone compiled all the music in this that's referenced in this novel and made it into a Spotify list. There is someone who just made a text list of all the songs, and it was so long. Obviously, he loves music, and he seems to have good taste, like like a wide breadth of like of what he's interested in. But aside from like the absurdly funny stuff, I think what I ended up coming across is like he really reminded me of two people. One was Hunter S. Thompson, as far as like kind of similarities in style, which I didn't participate in the conversation, but I was there when I can't remember who the co-host was, but we talked about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and this was quite a while back.
I think it was Ewan, with Ewan Glado, yeah. Big fan
Yes.
of Thompson.
Yes, it's like his style reminded me of that, and then also like Joyce Carol Oates, who can just like they can like nonstop writing. Like you're just like I said, reams and reams of writing. It's like, and they're obviously incredibly talented. Like the amount of material they can generate, and it's really well written, is phenomenal to me. But with Pynchon, it's kind of like listening to like a really great concert pianist, and every now and then like he hits this note that's really sour, not like, but particularly with me, and I think particularly it's when it starts straying into anything that has to do with sex. I think like his sexuality or how he expresses it or what he's into is just kind of jars with who I am as a person. It's just like not meeting halfway. So there'd be really fascinating things, and then there would just be like some remark he would make or some indication of how he sees the world, and it's just yeah, did not like it very much. So I think there's more to it than that, but it's just this is what's at the forefront of my mind right now. Where there's just passages where I just thought like why are you writing this? Like this is weird.
I don't know if it's part of maybe the postmodern movement that it was a progenitor of, almost from what I gathered looking back on his writing career. But it was definitely pushing boundaries in more ways than one. It can be off-putting. I don't know if I would say shocking, because I don't know if it was shocking per se, but it's so juvenile at times, with like a tongue in cheek, where you can feel he was just having fun at the expense of the readers, and it depends on how you as a reader take it. Where I feel like the Pynchon fans, the Pynchon stands that you were talking about, fully embrace this. It's like I love when he treats me like shit and makes me feel gross and dirty, and is always focusing on genitalia and erections and sex slaves and things like that. There's an entire chapter with the like the no sex clause of the people in like the Japanese businessman and the ninjet, and that entire subplot and characters. he's having a ball. I'm happy for him. I honestly would be interested in knowing how Pynchon actually writes. In the way, like, does he have a clear structure in mind? Does he sit in knowing today I'm going to write about this or that, or does he just like fly off the cuff, just like I'm just going to write whatever comes into my brain and print it, chapter done, because it has some of that energy, which is kind of Gonzo style, as you mentioned. I've not read, of course, everything from Thompson, everything from Oates. I've read a couple of their books each. They felt more focused
Oh yeah.
than
Yeah.
Pynchon in both cases, because even Inherent Vice, I wouldn't call a particularly focused book. You've seen the film. Even the film itself by PTA is not the easiest narrative to follow. Let's say, at least on a forced viewing. So it can be intoxicating by design, but I also found some elements of it to be quite fascinating for someone who's reading this in 2025, because I'm
Oh yeah.
not overly familiar with Reagan America, but everything that he talks about with the addiction to the tube, to television, this collective poisoning of society, makes the constant barrage of pop culture references, whether fictional or real, that fit into our world, at least, fit with the general theme of the book, one of the many themes of the book, which is this hatred, I would say. Almost, it doesn't feel like he particularly loves how Americans are turning more and more towards TV as a god, basically, that tells them what to do, how to feel, how to behave.
I mean, I'm in agreement with you there. And it's in some ways, I think, really chilling now, 40 years later, to
Yeah.
know that there's not just the television. There's all these other devices that now track us a lot more and, are trying to, find different ways to basically get ads in front of us. So that element of the book is very prescient, and he did have a sense that things were going to go in not so great direction. Recently, I can't remember where I was hearing this or I read it somewhere, but Orwell felt the same way as well, especially with like 1984, which is like, oh, what if the television watches you? And especially in this book, it's like, what if the tube watches you? And I'm sure in 1984, when this book came out, coincidentally 1984, when it's set. Sorry, when the novel is set. It's probably seemed absurd, like a television that watches you, that tries to, tailor itself to your wants or needs, or what makes you angry or sad or whatever, probably seemed impossible at the time, but now we're definitely living in it. So I think that's what I agree with you. That is one part of the book that I did identify with, but it's this thread that's kind of intertwining, or kind of jetting through all these different subplots and things like that. And like you said before, I mean, one of the ways that someone could reduce this novel and turn it into a joke is they could just say it's called Digression, the novel. I mean, because there's so many digressions. There's one passage I highlighted in particular where it's in the middle of Frenessie's, postpartum depression, and her father comes in to start talking to her, and it turns into a monologue of him talking, and then it goes into her father's entire backstory, and it's just like, yeah, but Frenessy is still like, is she okay? Like, what's happening with her? That's how the scene started, and we kind of get away from that, and it takes quite a while to come back. And maybe, like you said, that's just the way that he writes. He feels like he needs to get everything out of his system, which in some ways, like, I identify with, but I think it really does come down to, like, yeah, it's like you have to be on this train, and you have to love the train that you're on, and how fast it is, and how much it's going to wind or maybe go off the rails sometimes. Like, you have to be committed, and yeah, like I said, you just have to love Pynchon, I think, to really, really embrace everything in this novel. And to kind of
Yeah.
clarify some of my statements, like as far as the sex stuff, some of it is actually really funny to me. There is that digression about how Rex has sex with his car. Like that was so absurd to me. Just as far as like a subplot, like this love story with him and his car, and then him ending up giving his car over to these black revolutionaries, which that whole passage was really funny. But some of the stuff, like I took some notes here. I wanted to point out 3 passages. I think these are the things that
Please
bother
do.
me, where it's just like, it's specifically, I think Pynchon has issues writing women and teenagers, where it's just like sometimes the teenagers would say something and I think like, no teenager talks like that ever. Not all the time, but sometimes. There's a passage where Frenesy's thinking about what Prairie looks like and she imagines her as a centerfold. And I thought, that's bizarre. And then I thought, well, I don't have kids, so maybe I can't weigh in on this. But then
Relate.
I thought, I'm pretty sure if I asked all the mothers I know, have you ever thought about your 14-year-old daughter as a Playboy centerfold? I think they'd probably hit me or something. And then there's a passage way later on where Prairie is hanging out with her friends and they're all trying on lingerie they shoplifted at the store. And Prairie thinks to herself, like, oh, I wish that my dad was here because he really likes seeing teenage girls in lingerie. And I was like, what? Like, first of all, what teenager thinks that? What teenager thinks that that's normal? And then also, like, everything we know about Zoid, what he's thinking about, what he's doing, there's no indication that he is into that whatsoever. And then the last part was the very end with Brock. Like, right when Brock starts abducting her, he talks to his cohort Roscoe about Prairie's breasts being like apples. And I just thought, why? These are things I'm bringing up where it's just like, why is that in there? That is so weird. Did you catch on to stuff like that? Or is this just something I'm hung up on that's weird?
No. It's there. It's weird. It's slightly uncomfortable. I remember even in Inherent Vice, and again, you've seen the film, so you know.
It's been a
you know,
while. I don't think I remember it very well. I have to admit, I need to see it again.
one could say, the female characters are not the most well developed or most well treated. In a way, if anything, I do like how PTA changes some of their relationships. It actually turns them more serious in Inherent Vice. And it's something that even reading Vineland, I don't like Pynchon is from 1937. He was 53
Yeah.
years old at the time. I don't want. I'm usually someone that doesn't want to justify in any way behavior, like sexist behavior. I'm not someone who also likes to look at literature or films and trying to put it into like, like this is male literature and this is female literature. Only women can relate to Little Women and only men can relate to like Infinite Jest, as we mentioned. I don't like that. I think it's very reductive. But then I'm reading a book like Vineland and you get to some of those passages and then I hear you talk about them and they do feel very sexist. I don't know if I would go as far as to say misogynistic, but they definitely are not respectful portrayals in a way that like you're not reading those scenes in this book. And generally speaking, even I was very fascinated by the way that he just talks about Frenesy, who's probably the most developed character in the entire book, the one who gets the longest backstory, who probably gets the most scenes, or just trying to be a real character. And she feels almost three-dimensional and complex in the way that she is a revolutionary who wants to do good, but she is infatuated with fascist power. Essentially, the embodiment of it is Brock, and she hates him, she loathes him, and also she's attracted by him and ultimately succumbs to him, becomes this double agent, ends up ruining the 24 FPS group of revolutionaries, which is a funny name. I like everything about like the documentary revolutionary team of filmmakers. But then whenever you get to anyone else, it is mostly a joke, very sexual, very simple. The daughter Prairie is just amazing and great, and like she's a hippie and she's cool, but she's not out of touch. Like she's capable. In a way that kind of simplifies her character up until the end. There are some interesting. There is an interesting ambiguity with the ending when we get to her character, almost going to repeat potentially the same cycle that her mother went through. But yeah, all of this to say, yeah, it's a sexist novel. You could say.
It's weird. It's not. It's interesting. You're bringing up that word, and I think it's important. I didn't think of it the same way. I just kind of thought like to be that accomplished of a writer, and it could be that like you said, he was born in 1937. This is taking place in the 80s. This came out, I think, like 1990. Is that when you're writing something from another gender, it's still like a male point of view, where there was no one to check him and say like that's not the way that women think. Like I don't think that way. It's like I don't know any other women who think or process things in that particular way. It could be wrong. So I think for me it was more like a flaw in the writing. But I mean the way you're couching it is true. It is like just a very male point of view of everything, even when it comes like the women think of things in a male point of view, and there's references to like their day, like they spend their day masturbating or something like that, and it's just like I don't know, like I've talked to women my whole life, and then we don't spend all day masturbating, like we've got too much shit to do. But maybe these women are that way, I don't know.
They're revolutionaries from the 60s.
They're revolutionaries. They need to relieve that tension somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. And even the whole dynamic that she has, that Frenzy has with her new husband, where she's essentially playing almost a good housewife in a way when she's introduced. I mean, it's also interesting because you do have this constant element of the passage of time, people looking back at their past after 15, 16 years more or less of when everything happened in the 60s.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That time period. I like that part of it. In a way, I almost feel like there is a great novel for me, maybe even a great novel for you, of elements of this story. That if they were reshaping in some ways, it could lead to a more focused, concise story that just focuses on this primary narrative, because it is intriguing to say the least. And all of the parallels and the critiques that he makes towards Reagan and Nixon. There's entire parts in here where they're talking, like the way they're talking about the return, like neo-Nazis, the return of fascism. You could take some of those passages, put them somewhere else, and tell me this was written 2 months ago, and I'd believe you.
Absolutely.
Because it feels like things we are witnessing right now, almost in the same ways we're talking about them right now. So all of that I found to be incredibly compelling. And it's funny because I was going through some of those, again, like we don't know Pynchon's work that well. Apparently this is his most overtly political novel, which is cool, I guess. It's less interested in noirs and all those like fantastical diversions, and more trying to focus on the domestic life and America as a country on a political scale, social political scale, without losing some of the fun that could be had. I mean, I did have fun with multiple passages, which is the best thing I can say is I probably sound more negative than I actually am towards this book. I did enjoy myself quite a bit whenever I could just like go along for the ride. There's a whole sequence very early on where there's the boyfriend of Prairie who's part of a band, and they wrote down the name of the band as well, which was very funny. Billy Barf and the Vomitones.
Yeah,
Just
they
one
keep
of
coming
many.
back too.
Of course, of course. And they're going to like a party to play Italian music at a mafia wedding. There's this whole thing of them not knowing actually any Italian tunes, which appeal to me as the Italian. I'm very, I'm biased in that way. But just generally, there's some parts that do work as a comedy without mean-spiritedness, without sexism and objectification of people in any way, honestly. It's a weird book. It's probably the best way we can summarize it. Very weird.
Yeah. I mean, and like you just mentioned, yeah, there's bits and pieces of this that worked for me. I think one part of it that I want to highlight is, it begins with Zoid, and you get this impression of him where it's like, okay, this is someone who's a burnout, and this is someone who isn't making money, who isn't necessarily the most stable or I don't want to say caring, but like someone who's damaged in some way. Like he's not being the best father he can be. He has to dress in drag and throw himself through windows and stuff. And I thought that was all his choice. As the book goes on, there's the revelation that he has to do that. And I think that changed the way that I viewed him, as much as like he isn't a perfect person and he is someone who is kind of submitted himself to kind of being crushed like a bug, and he's just like, this is who I am now, like I can't do anything about it, and I'm a loser, and I do a lot of drugs, and I'm just trying to medicate myself because of the pain I've been through. But I mean, especially like his confrontation with Brock and being beaten afterwards, and then they bring Frenesy out, and Frenesy's just kind of like blindly smiling, and she leaves with Brock. I just thought, like, what does that do to a person? Like, you don't really come back from that once that kind of damage has been done. And the passage about him moving on from that and going to Vineland with Prairie, and him actually working really, really hard, and him realizing that there's this child who's depending on him and that he loves this kid, it gave it was like more of a sense of normalcy, or like someone who's actually caring about another human being, which the book isn't necessarily all about. So there was like this pocket in there. It was probably maybe a chapter or less than a chapter, where it gave me a different point of view of who Zoid was. And I think that probably parts of that are what's going to be showing up. And I think a lot more of that shows up in the film, which we'll get to eventually.
Well, I think we can get to it now, actually. I think it's a perfect opportunity because, funnily enough, that's what Paul Thomas Anderson really connected with. Listening to some interviews and reading interviews over the past few years, even before One Battle After Another was announced, he really loved Vineland. Like, he loves Pynchon in general. Of course, he ended up directing Inherent Vice not too long after it came out. Like, in my mind, I keep thinking that Inherent Vice is a much older book than it actually is, despite having talked about it on this podcast. But it only came out 6 years after it was released. But he was always a fan of his writing, which kind of fits with his dude bro persona, we could say, that PTA had growing up, or like becoming an acclaimed filmmaker that appeals primarily to young male, cis-het males. But he really wanted to do Vineland. As we've both read it, you can't really do Vineland. Like, it's something I watched recently, the Nouvelle Vague film by Richard Linklater, and it is one of my favorite quotes in a film. It's like, it's not unfilmable, it's just unproducible. And you're reading Vineland, that's the thing. It's like, no one would pay you to make Vineland unless you've changed it quite a lot, which is what Paul Thomas Anderson did. He really connected to Zoid and his relationship with Prairie, and this ghost from the past that comes back to haunt him, and the revolution, trying to make a difference and trying to make a change in this brutal world, trying to do something good. That's when Paul Thomas Anderson actually ended up choosing, thanks to, and I forgot to write down the name, which sucks, but the production assistant who passed away during the making of the film, the film is dedicated to him. it worked with Spielberg as well and a lot of other people. He convinced him to actually like make this Vineland adaptation, retelling, whatever. And so he wrote one battle after another. They shot it in a very, very unconventional way, almost like an independent film, but on a Warner Brothers budget. And now we have what people have called the best film of the decade, easily the best film of 2025. I'm curious, Hillary, what are your thoughts on One Battle After Another?
Well, I've seen it twice now, and spoiler, I like the film. Otherwise, I don't think I would have ended up here. That would have been really awkward. It's just having someone here is just like, let me
Could
tell
be
you about
interesting.
this film. Oh, yeah, it would be interesting, but it would be a bummer because I'm assuming, I mean, we know how these podcasts work. Chances are someone's going to click on this episode because they're either a Pynchon fan or they like One Battle After Another, and they want to hear people talk about what is great about both of those projects. So maybe we kind of underwhelm people who are Pynchon fans, and I apologize. Maybe we're like
being
we might
critical. We're being critical, which is good. It's healthy, you know.
Yeah, but we don't. I mean, clearly neither of us hate the book. It was just like, not for us, and that's okay. I do like the film quite a bit. I think it struck me even more the second time that it was funny. Like there's just like it was funny the first time, but there was just things you'd catch on the second watch where it's even funnier. And DiCaprio was very, very funny. And it's interesting to see that he has gone to this place because when he first started breaking through and getting attention, he was viewed in a very different way. And full disclosure, I mean, I was a child at the time. I was a kid. But there was things that he was already doing, sometimes even in serious films, that I found so desperately funny and no one else could see it. And they were like my favorite parts of the film. Like, I'm sure like you've seen Romeo and Juliet, right? Very serious, tragic film.
I've not actually.
You have not?
I'm ashamed of it.
Oh, don't be ashamed. It is. Don't be ashamed of that. But I think that if you do see it, you will understand probably like 50 other films exist because of it. Like the new Wuthering Heights film that's coming out, that exists because of Romeo and Juliet. Full stop. But
Avalanche
there's
effect.
yeah, it could be it's brought about some very interesting films that I think are quite good, but there's also a lot of not so great films because of Romeo and Juliet. But there's a scene in there where I won't go into it, but it's supposedly a serious scene, and he just like runs off and he flies like onto the ground and like hits a wall and knocks a bunch of shit over. And that to me was like so funny, you know? And that's what this whole movie is. It's just him doing things like that. So I'm getting too much into this, but it was a lot funnier this time around. And of course, like I paid a lot more attention to like the score and the editing because I was able to kind of pump the brakes a little bit more on the story because I knew where things were going. And it's just a really well-made film. There's a reason why it's done so well and people like it so much. I can understand why some people don't like it too, but I kind of err more on the side of liking this. So I'm going to stop and I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, unsurprisingly, as a dude bro, I love this film. I was very lucky. I was very lucky to actually watch this the first time on 70mm, because I was in Berlin when it came out, and it was perfect timing of just like, you know, in between shoots, of just like going to watch this film with my colleague. And I had a blast in a way that I was not expecting, because every time, like, Paul Thomas Anderson is one of those directors that, thinking about him with a distance, his movies always feel more grandiose than they actually are. And by that I mean that, you know, like it takes some time. It's like, oh yeah, Phantom Thread about, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis, who's sewing the clothes and designing everything, and there's a doom or the romantic relationship and blah blah blah. But they are watching the film. It's a very fun film. Like it moves at a quick pace.
It's funny.
It's very funny. There's there's jokes constantly. And same thing with pretty much almost all of his movies. I think, to be honest, probably There Will Be Blood and The Master, the only two that lean way more into like serious dramas, so to say, which does not mean they don't have moments of pure genre or comedy, or even like, I remember The Master is a very sexual film in a way that when you're just hearing people talk about it, I remember when people were talking about it the first time, they were selling it as a very different film, and then you're watching it, it's like, oh my god, Joaquin Phoenix is masturbating every scene in the first 5 minutes, and he's a freak of nature. And then similar, like There Will Be Blood, it's intense and it's operatic in some parts, but then there's also darkly funny in other moments. So going into One Battle After Another, everyone was singing its praises, but it was still the first week, so it wasn't overblown, I would say, the praise. I think it's just inevitable with films like this. Give it 1 or 2 more weeks, it's gonna become the best thing ever. After 1 week, people will start saying it's actually overrated, and the cycle repeats itself. So I watched it at the right time, and I actually ended up watching it twice in the same week because I just had time to waste before a flight. I was going to pull an all-nighter, so I thought might just go to the cinema and watch this again. And I really loved it both times, and even revisiting it now for the third time, which I rarely do nowadays, especially for a movie that's almost 3 hours long. I had a blast. Is it the best film of the year? Maybe. What do we consider to be the best film of the year? I think, like, it's, as you said, it's brilliantly put together. It's excellently cast, almost wall to wall. I don't think there's a single. We'll get to some of the actors. I think there's one in particular.
One in particular.
One in particular, who we'll talk about. But I even rewatching it now on my laptop, I was like, damn, like the soundtrack hits. The only thing that doesn't hit as hard, which is just unfortunate, is the humor, because watching this actually, the first screening in 70mm, it felt like I was almost at a stand-up comedy event, but in the best way possible, not in an annoying way. Like, people were engaged. Like, when DiCaprio was supposed to make you laugh, they would laugh. When you saw Sean Penn doing the funny walk, they would laugh. Like, you could hear the gasps the moment, of course, full spoilers for One Battle After Another, and Vineland, but too late for Vineland at this point. But the moment when there is the reveal of the paternity test, like, people gasp in the audience in a way that made it hit almost like it was an instrument in the soundtrack. It's like, oh my god, oh shit, she's actually the daughter. It's confirmed.
Oh yeah,
like all of those beats just work. It's almost 3 hours long. You don't like it's. You feel the length, but not in a way that's ever slow or boring or unengaging. I'm excited to delve into this film, not only just as the movie that it is, but also as this Vineland adaptation. That's the main thing I had going through my mind re-watching it this third time, because it is actually closer than I thought. While I was reading the book, I was thinking like, oh, it's like they're night and day. Like, honestly, like what's left actually of in One Battle After Another. But I'm curious how you felt about this whole connection, because it is, after all, inspired. I think that's also how it's written in the end credits, right? It's like inspired by Vineland by Thomas Pynchon. It's not directly adapting it, but the core of the story is there. The revolution, the father-daughter relationship, the rat, the revolutionary rat, who ruined everything. Even some of the Reagan-era politics. It is a film that's, people were calling it of our time, but it feels timeless almost, right?
Yeah, and I think the I didn't read too much about the production of the film. There were some pieces, leading up to it that I felt like, oh, I should probably be somewhat informed with, like, what their intentions are, what they're making. But it wasn't somewhat intentional to leave the timeline ambiguous. I suppose that if this was taking place in 2025, what we see the beginning is taking place in like 2008, 2009. And I think there is one shot, like when they bring Perfidia in and she's in the wheelchair, there is a guy with a phone, and it's like an iPhone, like taking a selfie with her or something. I think that's the only moment as far as like the flashbacks where I think it really does put it in, like it would have to be like the 2010s maybe or something like that. But the spirit of everything in Vineland, the important themes have been transposed into the film, and it's been made a lot more, it hews closer to reality. So what the revolutionaries are doing is, instead of 24 FPS, it's more closely modeled on the Weather Underground. So I had to sit down and, I reread, okay, what did the Weather Underground do? Because they did like blow up buildings and things like that, and kind of declared war on the government. But what the film also captures, which the book doesn't so much, is how quickly and how brutally the government deals with things like this. It doesn't seem to take very long or very much to make people flip against each other. And that's something that I had a more acute sense of while watching it the second time, where it's about, you separate people, you get them into an interrogation room, you put pressure on them, probably illegally. They don't have representation, they haven't been charged with a crime, and you just keep pressuring them until they, either give themselves up or have to betray someone else. And that keeps happening throughout the film. And it leads to death, like really quickly. I guess, which leads me to Perfidia. I think we need to address that character in some regard. She's a very dislikable character in some ways, the same way that Frenesy is. There's just like this inherent like self-interest and, I've got mine. I don't really care about anyone else, which, does spill over into other people's lives, just like abandoning her daughter, just not being honest with people. Everyone's in love with her, but they're never going to get anything from her except for Brock, As far as like the Frenesy character in Perfidia, it seems like even more exacerbated and worse. You don't really get a sense that she actually cares about the revolution or the issues. It seems like someone who's an adrenaline junkie, someone who likes sensations or really extreme feelings or risk-taking behaviors with no regard for anyone else getting hurt or anything. And of course, the moment she's in trouble, she turns everyone over and everyone gets killed. It's easy to forget that because it happens so fast, and the rest of the film has to take place after. But she's a very I've softened toward her more the second time, but the first time I remember talking to someone afterwards, and there's the letter at the end, and I was just like, if I knew someone had done that, and that specifically they'd done that to my dad, who isn't really my dad, I'd have a really, really hard time forgiving someone who did that. But anyway.
It reminds me almost, minor spoilers for Frankenstein by Del Toro. But it's something I was actually thinking about of the conversation we had with Carson about the ending of Frankenstein, of Del Toro's Frankenstein. Where I remember you were a bit more positive on it and Carson was a bit more negative, of thinking about how can someone, like a child, forgive a parent in that way towards the end of their life, in the case of Frankenstein. And rewatching the ending of this film, I was thinking about that scene actually. It was like, it's not so much that Willa, the daughter, forgives the mother, but there is this element that throughout her life she was always almost idolizing her. She's the revolutionary who got killed by the evil government agent, and she was good and just and right, and that's the lie that she has been told in a way that I think was a necessary lie to an extent. And I think it plays into one thing I really love about this film, which is the importance of symbols and how you have to remove the symbol from the reality. Which is funny considering some of the negative reviews I've read about this film. And I even got someone, just like an hour ago, someone really came on hating under my review, the recent review of this film. I can even read it to you if you're interested.
Yeah. Please read it.
Everyone is still praising it relentlessly, but I have a question. Is the portrayal of guerrillas in this film accurate? I don't know any terrorists, so I can't comment. But judging by the reactions it received, it's an accurate representation. So the people you defend so fiercely are people who betray their comrades, collaborate with the enemy for money and their lives, turn their backs even on their own families, and while claiming to give others freedom and the right to life, trample on everyone else for their own gain. The leftist game you play is capitalism itself. The identity they sell you is a simulation of capitalism. Courtesy of Tuna. Thank you, Tuna.
Thank you, Tuna.
Thank you, Tuna.
That is actually a very important point, and that they're making in a way. I don't know much about revolutionaries or guerrilla warfare.
We don't have personal experience with guerrilla warfare. Disclaimer.
No, we don't. I think that's one thing I also talked about the first time I saw this, and maybe you had a similar conversation. I'd love to hear what you think about this. Is that after leaving the film, especially seeing it in the theater, and like you saw in a lot more of like an interactive, like heated, like people really emotionally reacting in a positive way to this film.
Yeah.
Whereas when I saw it, like it was more subdued and quiet. I'm in the Midwest in the States, and people are a little bit more subdued. But while talking to people afterwards, I said, like, I think this film might make people think they can do stuff like this. That there's this misunderstanding where it's like, well, it's like, yeah, like I want to be a revolutionary, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And personally, for me, it's just like, no. Well, first of all, this is a movie; it's not real. And if anything, the film really brings home, like, if you blow up stuff or attack innocent people, like the bank scene. I think the bank scene is such an interesting turning point. I noticed the first time, but even more the second time, where the character Jungle Pussy is on the she stands up on the bank teller's desk and starts strutting around. And I thought that is like 80% of the people on the internet. Is there's people who like to talk big, and they're just like I'm this and I'm that, and like, and nothing can touch me. And, yeah, I have power, and like, or even people who say like, I'm going to protest or stuff, like they're all their persona, like, I can do this. But then the second you hear that gunshot, it becomes real. And we forget there's a contingent of people in all these revolutionary groups, or even, online. I mean, we have people killing each other all the time for political motivations, especially this year. When it cuts to Perfidia shooting a security guard on the ground, you realize that there is a huge difference. There's people who take things very literally, or just want to kill people, who align themselves with those ideals, or they just use those ideals as an excuse to do whatever they're doing. And everyone else, like, they just panic and run. They scatter. And they are, of course, like in this story, very quickly killed by Lockjaw. That's something that I think people do need to keep in mind. And honestly, like, you and I, we both come from European families who survived both world wars. I don't know what the background for your family is, but there was a lot of stories of, like, if you want to go against the government, or you have to resist in some sort of way, you don't do it that way. You just don't. You're either not going to survive, and it's just not it's going to end up damaging you. Like, if you're going to do stuff like that, you have to be a lot more covert. I think maybe we should move on to the later part of the film, because, like, for example, what Del Toro's character is doing and everyone surrounding him, that to me reminded me more of where my family came from, where it's like, someone was asking me, like, I want to be the person with, like, the machine gun. And I was like, yeah, like, I want to go fuck shit up and, like, drive around in cars and then, like, fuck the government. And I said, if I was anyone in this movie, I'd probably be that woman who's behind that plate glass who says, do you have diabetes, sir? Like, that's probably who I would be. Yeah, it's like, did you bring your insulin? She just shakes her head. No, it's like, it's really subtle things like that where, like, no one can really catch you, but you are able to maneuver things to get them to where they want to be. I feel like that's more realistic as far as, like, what we can do as normal people, instead of firing guns off and, I don't know, blowing up buildings.
It's also something that I mean, he says it himself. I love we have a little Latino Harriet Tubman situation back home. But like, no, how does he even put it? I should have written down like the actual quote, but he says something like, it's like, there's no money, there's no gain from this. It's just from the heart, just because it's the
Yeah.
right thing to do. He said something along those lines in the car. Which you see, and that's something that I find very interesting. And that's why when I was talking about symbols, I mean, I hate that that's the person I'm thinking about right now. I remember listening to an Eli Roth interview years ago, where one of the very few good things I've heard him ever say, is that when we go watch movies, it takes us 1 minute or less to judge a character in a way that we wouldn't, or at least shouldn't, in real life. You meet someone, you shouldn't judge them instantly for like after 1 minute, but that's something we do in movies, that's something we do in stories. And it's fascinating how a lot of the more negative people, like Good Tuna here, talking about this film, who don't like it, who see it as shallow politically or sending the wrong political messages, I feel like deep down, some of them, I mean, of course, not people are clearly far right, like Tuna, but some people wanted stronger symbols. The idea of having someone like Perfidia Beverly Hills, a black woman, militant, revolutionary, who you see is doing some good because she's partaking and coordinating the liberation of an detention camp in the opening of the film. She's fighting for abortion rights and women's rights. Of course, as you mentioned, they're just blowing shit up. Which, how much change does that actually bring? It brings fear, brings terror. We can talk about whether that's a good thing or not. Personally, leaning towards not that good in the short term and long term. But the idea that this revolutionary, this symbol, because she does become a symbol, you can see that people love her and love having her around, despite being reckless. Like she's pregnant and she's drinking and smoking. I think DiCaprio even says it. It's like she doesn't even realize she's pregnant right now. It's like
Yeah, I
shooting
wrote down that
machine
line.
guns. Right? It's like it's all those little moments, and then to see her fail and become the rat and give up her team, her squad, everyone she loved. It's disheartening, and I think that's the point. And in a way that doesn't, and I don't like how many made it feel racialized, which was interesting. I had conversations with a good friend from who belongs in the black community. It feels weird having to put it like this, but it's funny that I heard this primarily coming from Caucasians, white people, almost trying to defend this part. And it's something that actually this friend really liked, because he was like, yeah, she's flawed, she's a human being, and it doesn't mean that she has to be perfect. I actually really like that. And it's the same thing that I felt the first time around, and even rewatching it now, I like that she's like that. And I like that she messes things up. I mean, not narratively. It's not good that she messes things up. She should have been good and right and just, but no one is. You said it before as well. Like everyone, pretty much, in the moment where push comes to shove, they give up fairly easily. Which is what will probably happen. Like, what was it? I was watching the new Stranger Things show, and you have those scenes of the torture and the getting inside people's brains, and I can resist 2 weeks as you're pulling all my nails from my hands. Like, those types of things. I wouldn't do that. I would be like, what's the radio guy probably, or one of the
Howard, yeah.
kids. Howard, yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm not afraid of you. It's like, we got your sister though. We know who she is. We know
Yeah.
her name. We know where she is. It's
Yeah.
like, am I gonna fight back? Like, what am I gonna do here? It's like, what's the point? Even
Yeah.
lying, honestly.
And just like you said, it's so easy to judge characters who make those decisions. With Perfidy, I think I have a way more of a problem because I think in some ways it is personal, because there was elements of her character that reminded people I've just encountered over the course of my life. People who did
God.
who did do drugs while they were pregnant, or were just very, very selfish, or everything is about like, how can I sexually manipulate people around me, or not sexually manipulate, just straight up manipulate people around me to serve my needs and what I want right now. And we've all known people like that. So I think for her specifically, she really did rub me the wrong way. It's like she fucks up her mom's life. She abandons everyone. It's just really, really rough. And I think that for me, it's a very personal thing. However, I do like how the other characters are portrayed as far as like having that pressure put on you to flip. I think one of the things that could be carried out of this film is questioning yourself, like you're saying. You know, it's like how much pressure would an authority figure, whether they're bluffing or not, would have to apply to me to make me give up information. I think with Howard, it's a very interesting scene because he is someone who's been in the game for a long time, and he's just saying like, you can do whatever you want to me. If you do move the threat over to someone else that, I mean, in my case, like that I care about, it would be a lot harder. Where it's just like, well, then we're going to kill your mom, or we're going to kill your grandma, or your cousins or something. It's just when everyone would fold, probably. That's the reality of it. So that's something
Yes.
to definitely bring into real life from this. Is like maybe taking the time to make sure you really understand your rights if you do get detained in that capacity, because here in the States, like right now, that's actually happening. And so the chances of that in my lifetime are higher than they ever could have been. People are just getting arrested for saying like, hey, what are you doing? And you get slammed to the ground and zip tied and thrown into a truck and you get detained, you know? So yeah, it's something
scary.
good that could come out of this. Just something to think about, you know, like not talking unless there's a lawyer present or something, just very basic things.
Absolutely. And even one of the parallels that I found interesting with Vineland, which fits into the political realities of right now, the times we're living through. Because of course, like we've never explicitly talked about politics, but I gather we're both left-leaning, to say the least, we could say. But one element that I think the film really hits hard is that the fascists, they know how to get together and get shit done. And it's the same thing you see in Vineland. It's like, they have all the sweet money of government funding, the DEA and whatnot. And they're organized. They have spies everywhere. They have knowledge of everyone. They have the top people tracking everyone down. It's like, they're really good at their job. And you see it here as well, like Lockjaw. You activate him, he gets shit done. He has his other underlings doing his bidding and just interrogating people, kidnapping people, and we're going here, we're doing this, we're searching the city. There's a moment that was stuck with me the first time around, and every time we're watching it always hits me, is that they essentially build up so much purposeful hatred inside this town by doing those raids against the chicken shop and the taco place and just like closing down half of the city,
the school,
to the point that
and, like
there's
they bring that it's like
school
he shut down the school, and like even is
shut
it the
down the
Christmas
school.
Adventures where they say like, and then he hit the school, and like even them are like, that's a big mistake.
That's a bit
You do
much,
not
yeah,
you do
yeah.
not hit a school.
But that brings in a little riot in the streets, and they activate through what they call it, like bring Eddie Van Halen in
Yes.
with a Molotov cocktail. Just like the riot is going on, and it's something we see constantly when you have peaceful protests and riots and things, like not riots in a violent sense, but just a loud gathering of people opposing the government or certain acts, certain things that are happening, and you always get those violent individuals, and sometimes it comes out that they were almost planted there to cause trouble. Yeah, I'm a right-wing neo-Nazi, and I'm going to this peaceful protest just to beat people up and then cause the police to start firing tear gas, bring out the batons and kick people and arrest people. And that's a moment that really stuck with me. And on the flip side of it, of all of this, where you see how well organized they are, is that the revolutionaries are not well organized. Not only do
Nope.
they give in very easily under pressure, but you see that they're not united, that they have those insane codes to remember, that they're not helping each other out, they're making life more difficult for each other. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways people should take out of this. And again, I read some negative reviews where this was seen as a bad thing to portray. It's like they should be supporting each other, and this movie is actually showing the opposite, and that's not good. It's like, yeah, we should be more open and understanding, actually supporting each other instead of constantly creating those divides. And to have this film come out the same year as, but what a long year it's been as well.
I know. It's like
Trump.
just I guess
coming
like
in
go
power.
like we're getting close to the end. It's like just find an article. It's gonna be like 2025 in review, and it's just a lot of violence, a lot of horrible things, including things that have happened in my home state. There are things there. I did live in a neighborhood where what you described happened. I was not present at the time, fortunately, but there were people who did see things, and it's like there were plants there. There were white men who came from out of state who were driving around, and they burned things down, and they started violence, and then the police attacked. Like, we don't know whether one battle after another they pose where it's like, this is someone who's planted by the government. I don't think it goes that far, but there were people who were organized to basically destroy an entire neighborhood. And one of the things that I dealt with in the aftermath is and especially like certain people I knew were very pro riot, where they're like, there should have been a riot there. And it's just like, you don't know what you're talking about. It destroyed an entire neighborhood during COVID. No one could get any food. All the transportation stopped. Police presence isn't there anymore. So it's not black and white. It's just not that simple. And a movie like that does kind of highlight things, like to a certain degree. Like, I'm going back to Howard. I think like Howard had his shit together. As far as like having codes put in
as well.
Yeah, like those kids, they know immediately. They run in there and they start reading that code, which, because I'm a nerd, I'm going to bring this up. That is actually a real thing. If you guys aren't familiar with like number stations or the CONET project, look that up. You can download the whole archive for free, and they do use children's voices to submit like spy codes. It's so cool. And some of it's been sampled in pop music. If you go down that rabbit hole, it's really, really fascinating.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, and to kind of like tie it back as well to Vineland. I don't know, like I even remember people when this film came out a few months ago saying that they didn't see it as political, like as a political film, which, especially considering the first half an hour of this movie, makes me wonder what they mean when they want to talk about making a political film. Especially, and I think it's also important, like, to think about the times we're going through right now in terms of filmmaking and what types of movies are financed and they're coming out. Like, I can barely think of like actual political films coming out that don't boil down to one of those like Aaron Sorkin, people dressed very nicely in a room talking. I like that there's like a Battle of Algiers playing on a TV. Makes me think of also like Osagara's Zed and some of those other actual like political thrillers classics from the 60s and 70s. But I don't know, did you feel that? Because of course we talked about Vineland, which is incredibly political. Do you see some of what those people were saying about One Battle After Another? Because it does have a lot of those Pynchon eccentricities. We could say, like you mentioned, the Christmas Adventurers Club.
Yeah.
It's something that could have been part of Vineland, to be honest. I wrote down in the book, you have the Sisterhood of Kunoichi Attentives, and here it's turned into the Sisters of the Brave Beaver.
Yes. That's one part of the film that does retain something that seems kind of absurd from the novel, and it still works in reality. Although you do have to these like Catholic nuns who grow weed. Is that a thing? But I don't know.
An
Maybe
affront against God.
Maybe it is.
Lockjaw say.
It's every single scene where Lockjaw shows up, he's more clownish than the scene preceding it. It's pretty amazing. But as far as like politics go, I mean, it's definitely there. I think the question I would ask, or I would ask myself about people who say that they don't see this as political, is that there, in spite of everything, there still are people who are politically disengaged. Where if politics don't serve their needs, or they don't feel passionate enough about it, they're kind of able to just kind of tune it out. I heard a really fascinating conversation earlier this week where it was two guys. I mean, they're a bit older, they're Gen X, and they're saying like they have friends and family members who just have no idea what's going on, and they say it's particularly men because men are more safe in a certain way, and they have the I don't want to use the word privilege. I feel like that's such a poisoned word at this point.
You can use it though. It's fitting.
They have the yeah, there's another word for it. Like they have the ability to tune certain things out. So they said like there's men they know. It's just like if a lot of their time is spent either by like gaming or anime or pornography or gambling or sports or booze. Like it could be a combination of those things. Like that takes up all their time, and they don't even know what's happening on the news or anything like that. So they might I mean, and this is just an example. I'm sure there's a lot of women who probably came into and just saw the story for what it was. Like, oh, this is like a very intensely political situation, but it's divorced from reality, and it's basically about a father trying to reunite with his daughter, and she's in peril, and there's like an evil army guy, but they don't connect that to the reality at all. Maybe. Personally, I don't know anyone like that, but more time goes on, the more I'm being made aware of the fact that people like that do exist. And they might just see this as like, it's a story and it's out there. Like if this movie had come out, maybe like, let's say if this movie came out in the late 90s, it would have been like, oh, like that's an extreme story, but it wouldn't feel real. Like it feels more real now. Whereas opposed, like if it came out during the Clinton administration, people would be like, whoa, like imagine if the world was like that. Like that'd be pretty bad, right? But this is fiction, you know?
Yeah, especially for something that was shot in 2024 and came out, I want to say basically during the height of the ICE raids. There's all those sequences of just like, the government agents and the, I forget the name of the, not Mexican, but like the tracker that the government uses.
Avanti.
Avanti.
Yeah, Avanti. I want to talk about Avanti, and I want to talk about Deandra a little bit before we wrap things up, so we can put a pin in that. But
oh yeah, totally. But like you have all of those moments that like you even mentioned it before, just like people getting tied up and thrown into trucks and going away. Like they mirror things that were happening during the first Trump administration and have just worsened during this first year. In a way that is scary. I think there is an element, there is such a tactility to this film that is not present in the book. The book gets so heightened and so trippy, for lack of a better word, that it does lose connection to reality or any semblance to reality most of the times. It feels satirical. We could even say it is a satirical book to an extent. But this film, even with the car chases, like it's all done practically. You feel the weight of those cars. It's not a glamorous, like drifting in and out of traffic. It's just like sloppy and it's constant crashes. It's heavy. It's slow. There is something there that makes it feel so much more grounded and believable and realistic, I would even say. That even though you get a lot of funny moments, because it is, again, a very funny film, and some of those Pynchon flourishes do come in and out of the film. I find it shocking that there are actually some, and I do know someone who didn't really connect this politically to what's going on in the world. Even with something like the opening, I remember just like, we get to this opening sequence in the detention camp, and it's like, oh shit, like I've seen places like this in Europe. Where you just have immigrants be left to their own devices in these prisons, essentially open air prisons, just awaiting something. Most likely is going to be getting kicked back on the first flight back home to die. So it's I don't want to. I understand why some critics early on were calling this like one of the most important films of the year, And I think it is because of the genre trappings of it and the fun that you can have watching it. It's almost like how do you put it even? It's like, it's like eating a nice burger that has veggies in it. It's like you get people in because of the sauce and the cheese and the meat, but then you just sneak in
You got some
some of their
vitamins and
vegetables.
minerals in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Haha.
yeah. It's kind of healthy, or maybe they eat it and it turns out it's like a veggie burger. It's like all soy
It was an
meat or
impossible
whatever.
burger the whole time, and they didn't know. And they're so mad.
Like I hated, I enjoyed it. But I think that's part of the beauty of the film. And even rewatching it now, I'm just thinking like on a purely superficial level, it's so much fun to watch, and the story of just the father daughter bad guy works. But then you have everything else that just layers upon layers of humanity. And I'm actually curious about those two characters you want to talk about. What are your opinions on them? Because they're also controversial, we could say, in some of the more negative reviews that I've read of the film. So I'm
Oh,
curious what your
yeah, I'm
opinion
sure.
is.
Like, and that's kind of part of the press cycle right now. I'm sure you're aware of this as everyone else. Whenever anything comes out, there is a concerted effort in some way to publish things as quickly as possible, throwing the success or popularity of a particular film into trying to like provoke an argument. And I think especially with this one, it was like, well, this movie's dehumanizing toward Black women, or the people who of color,
Yes.
like things don't shake out so well for them. Although Del Toro did talk about how there was footage shot of him, like he's back in his dojo and everything's fine. And the way he behaves
Of
while he's
course
being
it's fine.
arrested is that he's like, oh, you're arresting me? Like, this is perfectly fine. You kind of get the sense that he's going to be all right. And there was footage shot to prove that. But watching the edit we have, it's like there was nowhere to put that. I really watched closely. It's like, yeah, where would you insert that with the flow of scenes that they're putting in there?
And credits.
It wouldn't
At
have
the end
worked.
of the
Yeah, like
credits.
after the credits, it just shows him like teaching a karate
Chilling.
class. That would have been good, actually. They could have put that in there.
We'll get the deleted scenes. PTA loves making those short films out
Yes,
of
that's
deleted
true.
scenes.
Like it'll be like
They're very
40
good.
minutes, and then I'm looking forward to that. Avanti, the first time I saw this, I came to a conclusion that now seeing it the second time, I think it was incorrect. Where from the very first scene, for some reason, I read it as like that guy is actually like a mole. He works for Lockjaw. The Christmas Adventures question his reputation just because of his Native American ancestry. But particularly like when he takes Howard from the house, in my memory, which wasn't accurate, is that he looked at the boys as if signaling them to go to the radio. That actually didn't
Okay.
happen. So, but the way he behaves, it's probably one of my favorite sequences in the film is where he turns. He's like, first of all, I don't do kids. And they're like, we'll deliver her here. And with no lines, no backstory, no explanation, I'm dying to know what he and Paul Thomas Anderson came to an understanding to as far as this character's motivations, his backstory, and why he did what he did. But he just goes back and he decides, like, no, I'm just going to kill them all. And maybe his plan was to take her out of the situation, but he got killed in the process. So I found that character very interesting, but he is a mystery. The other character is Deandra, the Regina Hall character. And maybe I'm wrong, but in the aftermath of the film's success, I did not hear people talk about her character very much, and I could not stop thinking about her character for days. It just really, her character really broke my heart. Because she seemed like a genuine person who actually did believe. She really hung in there. She was helping everyone. There's a scene early on in the film where she helps, at the time, let's Pat and Willa get into the car, and she hugs him and she says, "I love you." And he doesn't say anything back. I'm not trying to suggest that she was in love with him, but being there as a friend, listening to his concerns while his wife, or Perfidia, is acting strange during the pregnancy, like she was a really good friend to him, and he doesn't even acknowledge that. He just leaves with the kid. And then
He's
she
lost
comes
in his
back.
own world already.
Yes, he's just panicking and freaking out and like maybe not thinking straight. But yeah, then she just comes back and she just gets fucked over, and she's brought in to be interrogated, and they keep saying like, this is what's going to happen. You tell us where Bob is. And she says, I don't know, over and over again. She has no cards to play. She did everything right. She's a good person. She gets taken to prison, and we never hear about her again. Like, that's one thing about this film that really bothered me. And at the very end, I thought, couldn't they put in something? Like, it ends with him taking a selfie, and I just thought, like, it's like, she's got, like, Willa has got to have told you about what happened to Deandra. You should be doing something other than playing with your fucking phone. Do something. So that's a caveat for this film that actually hit me really, really hard.
That's something that I was thinking about even reading Vineland. We joked about it as well in the beginning of how, just some characters are introduced and then they vanish and you don't hear from them again. And it is present in One Battle After Another. You have some like one scene character, maybe two scene characters that come and go. Some get a name, some don't. If like Alana Haim doesn't really get a name in the opening of the film, and she's swiftly removed as soon as
that's
violence starts.
Yep.
Which is a effective scene. Both times, like all the times I see it, it works. There's something about like the wig just falling off, and like you don't expect it to happen.
It's unpleasant. Yeah, when I had to watch it a second time, I was just like, how fucking. I mean, because it's loud too. I mean, I also have to give like, that's actually a really hard scene to shoot. It's literally because the door has to close and she has to follow the shot, and like everything has to be rigged perfectly because we see everything through like this small sliver in a door. So how many takes was that where she had to do that? Kudos to her. I mean, and I guess like Sean Penn too. It was shocking. It was a bit of a shocking scene actually.
It's that's when I think you mentioned it as well before with the bank scene, but that's when everything becomes real. There's not much violence in the film per se, and I wouldn't even say it's a particularly bloody film. I want to say you see like maybe one out of focus bloodied body during the climactic shootout that we just talked about, but other than that, you don't get much blood or anything like that. But that's like those moments of violence, of the car crashes, of the shootouts, like it feels real. It hits emotionally in a way that very few other action films, and I don't like calling this an action film because it feels like putting it into a box or a label that doesn't really fit with it. But for argument's sake, sure, in this action film, it feels so much so visceral, and I really appreciate it in a way how all of those characters just like come and go from the narrative. And especially this time around, I was actually thinking about the opening of the film and the ending of the film. It's something I try to have fun with sometimes. It's just, what's going to be the first shot and the last shot? Do they connect? Do they match? Do you feel the circle closing of the movie you just watched? And with this film, the opening shot, Johnny Greenwood's score kicks in and you have Perfidia just walking, sunset behind her on the highway near the detention center. And the closing shot is of the daughter entering a car. We don't really know where Perfidia is in her life when we start. It feels like she is early, we could say, in her career, or starting to make a name for herself, because after that, Lockjaw is following her around and they're starting to keep tabs on her and everything. But the film is called One Battle After Another, and there is this cyclical element of they're fighting a war that has been going on for generations. That's what the parents of Perfidia say, which is also, I like that parallel as well from the book, where you have the mother of Frenzy, who also doesn't agree with Zoid being in a relationship with her daughter. She's very against him. She's a much more prevalent character in the book, and she's very funny actually. She just hates him. She despises him.
Yeah, but why?
It's just not up to par, I guess.
He's not suitable. Like the mother in the film is a lot more kind about it, almost trying to tell him like, you need to get out of this. Like you're not cut out for this. And
she was right. She was right.
She was.
Yeah, she knew her daughter very well. But it is this constant cycle, and I like that it's just people coming and going, in a way that it feels undeniably like, even rewatching it now for the third time, the last time you see Del Toro is just gleefully talking about having just drank a few small beers. Like you said, he's gonna be fine almost. But the last time you see poor Regina Hall,
Oh my
she's just
God.
crying
Yeah.
in a car, being taken away, which is unfortunate, and it's almost like she's a casualty of this war in this specific battle. She became a casualty. Maybe she comes out of prison. Maybe she manages to make it out unscathed in some way. We don't know, but I think that's like the message that I hope more people take away from this film on a political sense, not to go out and start burning buildings and whatnot, and the kidnapping people or whatever nonsense. That's not true revolution, but just trying to make a difference, trying to be more conscious of what's going on in the world, trying to be aware of it. There's like Bob has removed himself from everything that's happening in the world. He's just paranoid, a drug and alcohol lover, as he calls himself. But by doing so, he's also been excessively shielding his daughter. And you see her at the end that she's active, fighting the good fight, you hope. We don't know where she's going, what she's going to do, but it feels like she's going to do good. There is hope for the future. There is hope for new generations. And for all the negatives that I've heard some people say about, like as you mentioned as well, like, oh, the black women in this film, the way they're portrayed. It's like, I don't know. I come out of this film all the times thinking, you remove Bob from the equation, things still turn out pretty good, actually. Like, Willa doesn't need him. No one needs him. He's just stumbling around aimlessly, surviving somehow thanks to other people's goodwill. But
As far
he's
as the
not good. And
situation in a way, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
yeah, he misses the shot when he's aiming at Lockjaw. I love that little moment when he's sniping and you just have those 2 seconds of silence before Lockjaw enters the car. It almost makes you think like he hit him, maybe. It's like, no, it didn't even
Oh,
hit him
absolutely. I
like
knew he'd missed him
sideways.
immediately. The second he's up there, it's just like he's not going to hit him. There's no way because of who
Who he
that
is.
character is, and you have to give somewhat like that's something about DiCaprio I've always liked is that he takes on characters that aren't about making him look good. In fact, the entire movie, he looks just harried and terrified and ill and
You can smell him.
paranoid.
You smelled people like him. It's like,
It's that is kind of true. I didn't think about it so much until the second time, right? Just that like what that man has been through. Like he was just not prepared. But he is. I do want to give him a bit more credit because I was thinking about where Willa came from. Like Perfidia and Lockjaw's romance or tit and tat, like whatever you want to call their relationship, is really disgusting to me. Like it was just gross. Like just two people using each other, sexually fetishizing each other, maybe. And with it did make me write down at one point, it's like there is a question about nature versus nurture, that the way that Willa turned out, that Bob or Pat, his real name, Pat did something right. And you do see him with her as a baby and you can tell that he cares about her a lot. A lot of that time is missing.
yeah.
He did something right. And there's the scene where he goes to the school and he's such a fuck up and he's just, there's so much about him that's a problem. Like he does need help with drugs and alcohol for sure. But when the teacher starts talking about how his daughter's doing well and he just starts crying, he's so worried about that. He's so worried about her being a fuck up like him. And maybe not to give him full credit, him raising that daughter on her own, that she looked at him, she's like, I don't want to be like that, was enough for her to be the way that she is. And in some ways it's unfair. She's had to be a parent to him. That's not okay.
Probably.
Yeah, like the first conversation they have where she's like, where were you last night? How did you get home? Were you drinking?
Well, that's a
It
detail
should
that
be the other way around.
There's one detail that I love that the first time I watched the movie I was like, did I hear that right? And then rewatching it's like, yes, where Howard gives them the new identities. And it's like, oh yes, it's Willa Ferguson and Bob Ferguson. It's a mother and son who just passed away. And you can see DiCaprio person is like, oh, well, okay, just like getting lost in all the jumble. But it's like, yes, it's a mother and a son, and the relationship becomes exactly that. Like she's taking care of him. He's the father.
That
He's
is
the adult in the
true. I didn't
relationship,
catch
and
on to
she's the one
that. That's so
who's
true.
nurturing him, and it's fitting.
Oh man.
It's very
Yeah.
fitting.
But you can see, like, if you have really good actors and you have a good director, the first scene where we see them interacting, and it is very accurate, as
It's
far
the
as like,
only scene as well
well,
before
no,
the
like,
ending.
yeah, before everything goes wrong. Like that's the all you know about the relationship. In some ways, it's normal, and it's also very funny. The second Bluto's out the door, just watching. I don't know. I just like watching him react to things. Where like he opens it, he's just like, "What are you doing there, home?" He's just like, "Do you knock that hard?" And he just like slams the door in this kid's face, who's like a foot shorter than him. It's just so ridiculous, but it's stuff that we all identify with, or at least we've seen before. Where the way that parents and teenagers talk to each other and argue, it is somewhat normal and it's abnormal. But if you contrast that to how they're speaking to each other near the end of the film, there is a lot more of a chance that I think that their relationship could get better and that they're going to be more honest with each other, hopefully. Although, like, I did notice it's like, yeah, he has a wine bottle there and he's drinking wine. He needs to quit alcohol. Like,
It's not beer.
it's not beer. Maybe
I guess.
I'm sure there was discussions on set, like, how can we kind of illustrate that maybe Bob's a little bit better? But it seems like they're the way they interact with each other is so much better, and he's supportive. And when she goes to the radio, I did like write down. I was like, "Is that Howard?" I don't think it's the same voice, but there is a man announcing something. I thought, like, did Howard get to go back and still broadcast?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Wishful
maybe,
thinking.
maybe not. We don't know. I mean, yeah, wishful thinking.
Well, actually, one last character we haven't directly talked about before we bring everything to a close, of course, is Lockjaw.
Oh boy.
In the book is Brock Vaughn, the government prosecutor, and of course in the film he's played by Sean Penn, who gets name dropped. I messaged you as well when towards the end of the book where they're talking about like a fictional film. Sean Penn himself gets name dropped in Vineland, which was
Yeah,
one of
near
those,
the end,
like,
it's great.
stuff. He's like, what? Did I just read that right? Sure, it's just fun connections like that. I remember everyone was singing his praise. I mean, we both really talked poorly of Sean Penn's directorial skills when we spoke about Into the Wild early in
That's true.
2025.
Yeah, we did.
And I wouldn't call myself a fan of him as an actor. I have enjoyed him in many roles. To be honest, I don't want to be hyperbolic. I might have to agree with many who say this is one of his best roles, if not his best performance, in the sense that there is just something about him playing a very scary buffoon. Because
Yeah.
Lockjaw is very scary and a buffoon, right? There's also the
Yeah.
way he walks, just by the way he walks, I was in love with him. It's like, yes, yes, the little strutting with the shoulders up and down.
Yeah, it made me think like he does. The only way I could put it, I mean, and this is very Pynchon. He'll probably love me for saying it's like he does walk around like there's something literally jammed up his ass. Very much so. And I would, of course, I'm interested in the choices that actors make, or it's like, how am I going to, because I know that Sean Penn doesn't walk like that. He doesn't move like that. His face doesn't twitch like that.
He got jacked as well. It's
Oh, yeah.
scary.
His shirt is so tight. That whole scene where he's like, "Are you saying I'm a homosexual?" And it's just like, well, that's where you went.
I
She
didn't say
said, keeps saying it. She said, "I did not say that." Why is your shirt so tight? But yeah, it's something I noticed more the second time, where actually the first scene with Perfidia, which is also like, I have to highlight how creepy of a scene that is. Like watching that, I was just like, how is this not a sexual assault? It's just basically this woman coming in and sexually assaulting a guy.
Also very Pynchon.
Very Pynchon, I guess. And he seems somewhat normal. And then every single scene up until the very end, I feel like gets more and more exaggerated and ridiculous and just like fucked up and weird, which I guess maybe that part of the characterization, maybe that absurdity has been lifted from the novel because everything in that is very absurd. But Brock Vaughn is a totally different character. Like you kind of get a sense like he's very together and he's very attractive to Frenessy, and to her he's some sort of sex god, you know. He has like some charisma, and then you see this version of the character in the film, and you just, like you said, like you could smell Bob because of all the garbage he's been through, and like he hasn't bathed and he's been running around and sweating, and he probably smells like weed. Like, sure.
Yes.
But there's something so much more repellent about Lockjaw, where it's just like every time he shows up, it's just like, oh, I don't want to look at him. That haircut, the way he
haircut is
says
amazing.
it, the haircut's just horrible.
Licking the comb. And
Yeah, ooh.
parting the little strand of hair.
No, and just the way he says things and does things. It's more near the end, the scene he has with Chase Infinity, where it's like he went to, like, the character became too, like, he was overacting in some scenes. Just like, and he's screaming, "I'm a Christmas adventurer," and he gets in her face and screams that she's a mutt. It
Sean
kind
Penn.
of it goes beyond what he should have been. Although, I mean, in his defense, he's probably gonna get nominated. Who knows? He might win for this. I have no idea. And people seem to really like the character, but for me, it wasn't my favorite performance in the film.
Yeah, no, I agree in that sense. There are other, I mean, there's just something about the calming presence of Benicio del Toro that's like instantly hit me on a first viewing. But with Lockjaw as a character, I did actually really like how PTA humanizes him in a way that felt very fitting with how men like him are.
Yeah,
And just generally speaking, even like even taking it outside of who he is, just there is something about people who absolutely hate certain minority groups or certain people of different sexual orientations or whatever, that is so deep and extreme that it feels like they're just scared of actually liking that. So you have this entire first part where he's obsessed with perfidia in a way that I like the way you talked about it, where it's kind of fetishized for both of them. Like she fetishized him as the soldier boy, and he fetishizes her as a voluptuous black woman. But the way that the way that he just, you see him, that he's so conflicted to just, he wants to be part of the Christmas adventurers, and he feels the honor of being even considered for this position, and he knows he has to clean his past, clean his slate. And throughout this journey, he has those moments where, especially when he's talking with Willa, where he goes from like, oh, I buried your mother and she was awful, and then afterwards in the car he's like, no, she was a warrior. She was tremendous, and he wouldn't get it, and show respect to her. He's constantly switching back and forth, which is ultimately his downfall as well. And I do love how they make him into a proper cartoon by the end of the film, where it's like he has survived everything and he's just completely disfigured, and he's talking about reverse rape, which is just as a term, it's something I've actually heard in life, where it's like, a man cannot be raped. It's just, it's just something, but in reverse.
Oh, you'd be surprised. I mean, they also call her a semen demon, which that's very that's very Pynchon. I don't think semen demon is in the novel. I may have missed that, but it does seem like something that would be. It seems like something from the book, for sure. It's like, you mean she's a semen demon? And just the Christmas Adventurers Club, the way that they position it for him, like there's the line about like, you would just be superior. That doesn't mean that you're stronger or smarter or the wisest. It just means you're superior. And it's just like, I'm sitting there alone watching this with just my hands on the top of my head, where it's just like, oh my God, that's right. There's people who think this way. And it's just like, what's the point? All of this is so we can join this stupid club. That entire town gets raided so he can get into this stupid club. It's so much for nothing, and they don't even want him. He's a liability. They have to literally cut him loose in every sense of the word.
They regret it instantly. That's something I love. It's like, oh
Yeah.
shit. Just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, we need to clean up our mess right now.
Everyone who's cast as the men who are involved with it, very, very good choices. I mean, Kevin Feige, I think, is best known
Yep.
for Roadhouse. Just the kind of like this fictional version of like white male incompetence, where it's just like, I'm very important, but I'm in a wheelchair and my mouth's hanging open and I don't really have much to say, but I'm superior to everyone. I also found out that like I can't apparently tell certain white men apart because Tony Goldwyn shows up in the hotel scene. That's Tony Goldwyn, right? Or is that the other guy?
It's Tony Goldwyn.
Okay. Because when
Yes.
they introduce, I think his name's Peter, the guy who ends up like the hitman, he comes in and it happened both times. I'd forgotten about this. So when, what's his name? John Huganacker shows up, I'm just like, oh, it's Tony Goldwyn.
Tim Smith.
Tim, thank you. So
I
he
swear
walks,
to you, I thought they were the same.
yeah,
I
when
thought
he
it
walks
was
in the
the
room
same
and Tony
character.
Goldwyn is there, I was like, what the fuck is happening? I was like, I thought that was Tony Goldwyn the whole time. And it happened both times I watched this movie. I was like, I can't tell them apart. Wow.
Which I mean, I think and probably hope it was intentional actually, in the part of the casting process, because yeah, that entire sequence is ridiculous. It's so vile the way they're just talking about like race purity, and like, oh, the floor has to be clean. You can just eat off of it. It just
That's such a
it's creepy. It's
It's
so it's so insane because of what it is, and you have the Christmas music. I love that you have the Christmas music playing in the background as it's just going through this seemingly endless underground series of numberless rooms.
Yes, that was almost like I mean, I know it's like Lynch is overused as an adjective, but it does seem like something out of Lynch. Like, oh, he's in a suburban house. He went through a door in the
It's like
wall. Now
like
he's in a
Wild at
subway
Heart.
underpass. Yeah,
There's like
it's
the
just
whole
weird.
underground society of assassins in Wild at Heart. It's so, or even honestly, it reminded me even of Us, the Jordan Peele film. It's just like he's just
Yes,
going
yeah.
underground. It's just like an endless tunnel.
Or
Sure.
who's the guy who runs everything in Mulholland Drive, like he's just in some undefined space, sitting in a room with a spotlight on him. Like
Yeah. The
kind of made me think of him.
Kevin Anderson.
It's Michael
was
J.
that the name,
Anderson
maybe?
played him, right?
Michael J.
Yes.
Anderson. Sorry.
Yeah,
Michael J. Anderson.
just something surreal like that, but in a totally
Pulling the
different.
strings.
Yeah, pulling the strings. That's what these guys are doing too. It's just, and I also have to highlight Jim Downey, who's in the hotel scene, because he was I think he was the head writer for Saturday Night Live and wrote some amazing stuff. And just his delivery, it's like we need you to take care of like drug pushers, and like he used like some weird like gutter trash or something, or like street punks or something, where it's just. It's like, you need to get rid of all the bad guys, this, and that, and that. And I just thought, like, they really hired the right guy to say that line without a hint of irony. And it's still really, really funny. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about Paul Thomas Anderson's. There's things that are very darkly funny. I think after Fandom Thread, someone pointed out this interaction on Twitter. I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter, or it was Twitter at the time. It's X now, but someone wrote Paul Thomas Anderson or tweeted at him after Phantom Thread, like, when are you going to direct a comedy? And he tweeted back and he said, I just directed one. So that confirms what you were saying. Phantom Thread is a comedy. And I think I have a sense of that too. It was fortunate for me. I was allowed to do this, but I was not able to see There Will Be Blood in theaters. I watched it at home. And for some reason, the ending of There Will Be Blood, that last shot, and then the music they chose were the credits. I laughed and laughed and laughed for like 5 minutes. In the theater, people would have thought it would have been so inappropriate. I laughed so hard. I found the end of that film hilarious.
It's
just
a punchline.
how fucked up he is. Yeah, he's just sitting there like, I'm done. And then it was like bluegrass music or something. I lost it. I thought it was hilarious. In this film, it's a lot more apparent what's funny and what isn't. But it's always kind of existed there. And I appreciate that about his work, although I can't say I'm a huge Paul Thomas Anderson fan, you know, like through and through. Like if people ask me, what's your favorite? It would probably be Punch Drunk Love. You know, I don't think that's the first one people would say is his finest hour, but I love that one the most because it's weird.
Yeah, I do love. I'm a Phantom Thread truther. It was like I just really love that film. But I agree with you. I don't want to put him in the same at the same level of Christopher Nolan, but or even David Fincher. But you know, it's just like those directors that are so beloved by a general public. I don't know if that's the reason why, maybe, but just I never really crave their films. But then whenever I watch them, I'm like, oh, it's great.
No, that was
It's like,
fun.
oh, it was just like, yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm watching. I watched like Licorice Pizza in the cinema before this came out. They were rescreening some of those films. I was like, this is great. Why didn't I watch this more times? And that's just, I never do. I never go back really to rewatch them. Same thing with Fincher. Same thing with Nolan. Like they come out, maybe I rewatch one or two just because it's like, oh yeah, I think I should rewatch one of his films, and then I watch it. I think it's actually really good. Why don't I watch them more often? I don't know, just like goes away. So I really do end up loving most of what Paul Thomas Anderson has done. I would not put him among my favorite filmmakers. I think there's something that just doesn't directly speak to me. I think that's maybe the easiest way I can put it, to be honest. If anything, Phantom Thread and Inherent Vice are the ones that speak to me on a deeper level, emotionally speaking. There's something about the relationship angle there that works really well. But he's always fun. He's always reliable. He always delivers. And in this case, he delivered a really good film. A really good adaptation. We could say Vineland, maybe. Do you have some final thoughts about all of this? Or maybe there's still something you wanted to discuss about the film or the book?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, I'm glancing at my notes. I always have like this half page of notes, then with my handwriting scrawled all over it. But one thing I did think about is whether whether Willa's ever going to tell Pat that he's not her dad. And in my position, considering what he's been through and already, what he's already done, and like already like this addiction, I probably would never tell him. It's kind of, I guess, like the reason I kind of know it's not going to happen is the scene she has with Lockjaw, where she says, "I already have one. I don't need you." And I think that maybe Chase Infinity is given lines. She plays it very well, but I think there's some scenes where she is staring off to the other side of the room, and it's like, what the hell would that feel like if you were in that situation where you're slowly realizing that not only are you in danger, but this guy could be your father. What happened to your mom? She's having to play a lot of really complicated things, and she does a really amazing job.
Yes,
and
indeed.
and I love it when screenwriters and filmmakers make a conscious decision, especially they collaborate with actors, about making their characters as smart as possible. And they made her so smart. The chase scene, the thing is, I was driving recently and I did kind of go up and down hills, and I thought that would totally work. If someone is chasing you, you just stop your car and leave like that. I thought like that's such good storytelling as far as like coming up with something that I've never seen in a film or a television show before. That's so devastating and so fucking smart and awful in a way. But she has to protect herself. And the guy Tim fucks up the moment he leaves that car. It's so good. It's very
and she shoots him.
satisfying.
She knows what she's supposed to do, and she does it. And kudos
Yeah.
to
And
her.
then her dad shows up and she has a bit of a harder time. Because if you
I
think of
swear
what
to
she's
you,
been through,
I was ready for her to shoot him. The first time watching it, I was like, "Oh my god, she's gonna shoot him.
I was like, don't
It's
do it.
gonna go
That's like
so wrong."
you do not know the fresh hell your father went through to find you. I think for me, in a way, it's alien too, because I don't have a father in my life at all. So it's like the idea of like a parent going that far for you. That's like that. Even though I mean, we've both talked about how he always has issues and is considered a fuck up. He does everything he can because he loves her. And I mean, as useless as he may come across or be, he's able to
He's
bring her
there.
home. He
He's there at
shouldn't,
the
like,
end.
she wouldn't have been able to come home Like the fact that he is there and he does have that rifle, and he probably would have killed someone. Maybe he would have, fucked it up or something, but he would do everything he could to be there for her. And he doesn't aim the rifle at her or anything. It's
She's keeping the gun pointed at him. She's asking him to say the lyrics, which again, like a Pynchon connection,
Oh,
is
yeah.
the importance of music and pop culture. In this case, the revolution will not be televised, which is a great song as well.
yes, I think it's the second song that plays during the credits. And
yeah.
I haven't known much about Gil Scott Heron until several years ago, but there's a great documentary about him. I think it's called Black Wax or something. I don't know. I'll make a note of it and put it on my list. But if you, his whole thing, like, if you like that song and then the film, definitely look into that guy. He's a great artist and had a very interesting life. So I think that's it. I think there isn't anything else, unless there's something you want to talk about.
Not really. Not really. I'm just very happy and glad we did this, because I remember when I finished watching One Battle After Another and I saw the Pynchon reference. Officially, it was confirmed it is indeed inspired by Vineland. I was just curious of actually reading the book and see how much of it would connect. And, well, broadly speaking, they are very different in tones and styles and whatnot. You do see the DNA from the book bleeding into the film. You do see how PTA made it his own and made it work and turned it into an actually producible film that's not as alienating as Inherent Vice was. I think Inherent Vice, the only problem in terms of appeal, we could say, is it's almost slavishly faithful to the book in all of its weirdness and idiosyncrasies that are just a bit too Pynchon to actually work. And in here it scales it back, makes it more his own, and it works far better. And good for him, honestly. He's probably gonna get all the Oscars, and why not? It could have been for a far worse movie, honestly. So I'm very happy with this, with how it's turning out. I would even struggle in asking which version of the story you prefer, because it's so vastly different, and I think we're both leaning towards preferring the film. It's definitely shorter than reading Vineland.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I think it was. We both listened to an audiobook just to make things clear, and so it was like 15. Wait, how many hours was it? Was it 15 hours?
Even close to 16. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a big one, but I do like, and I forgot to write down the name of the reader. I don't know if you have it.
I think it was like Gavin something, or I'm probably not remembering it correctly. Or Graham. It was Graham or Gavin. It was a G name.
Maybe. Yeah.
Graham Winton. Oh man, I'm horrible at stuff. Honestly, the part where Howard throws all those codes at Pat.
Graham Winton, you're right.
Graham
sorry.
Winton. Okay, I was close. Yeah, just the scene with all the codes, like, I'm so bad with my short-term memory. There's no way I would have remembered that, and I don't even do drugs or drink. Like,
I
it
don't
would have
blame
been
him.
15
No, I
years
don't
later.
blame him.
They're just like, yeah, what's the code? What's the code for you to talk to someone? It's just like, that was 15 years ago. How am I supposed to remember that,
And he goes through like 2 or 3 passages of it, 2 or 3 steps. It's like the last step.
Well, it's such an adult thing too. Like,
password.
everyone's been on a phone with someone where you can't get where you need to go with the conversation on the phone. And it's articulated very well. The frustration that every adult goes through with like an insurance company or customer service at any level, where it's just like, please just listen to me. I'm a human being, and they won't let you get what you need. So very identifiable.
Self-sabotage. Do you have a favorite quote from the book that particularly resonated with you? I ask this as I look for my own quote, which I forgot to write down.
Well, because it was an audiobook, I don't have anything transcribed necessarily, but there was two lines that stuck with me that I can paraphrase. One was that talking about the nostalgia for the 60s during the 80s, which I found very interesting, because I think there's been nostalgia for the 80s for almost 40 years now. Like, I'm not kidding. It started in the 90s. There was already a nostalgia for that. And then the 2000s, 2010s, It seems like it is just starting to fade now because I think there is more of a cultural consciousness of just about how politically toxic the 80s were. Like maybe we shouldn't talk about that so much.
I
But
blame Stranger Things as well.
oh yeah, I mean that's just one of many examples, but it has really succeeded at kind of cannibalizing that decade and making it its own thing.
Television poisoning the masses,
Yes,
selling them
he was
a
correct about
different
that.
ideology and a different version of history. As Bob says, are you teaching the right kind of history? Not really.
Yeah, well, he talks about the Philippines, and I didn't learn about that until I was in my 20s. That wasn't covered at my high school. So he's making really good points, but he's so high. You just
It's
like,
so high.
the teacher's so nice to him, too. It's so great. That's a great scene. And then the other thing was, it was a passage near the end. I ended up looking it up, but he talks about how the whole of America is in a pre-fascist twilight, and all the twinkling lights around are the tube. And that resonated with me now because fascism is a word that's being used a lot more lately. There's a lot of people in America who are afraid that's the direction things are going, and we might not be able to come back from that. So it's it was a very striking description of America in 1990 that does seem more true now. So those are the two highlights I had. What were yours?
I wrote down multiple quotes. For the sake of time, I'm going to read just one, which is also the shortest one. But they all play into this, similar to the ones you picked about criticizing like Washington, D.C., or the state of Reagan. And there's this one that I particularly liked. There's also another one that I wrote down where it's talking about Zoid and crying, which is it's talking about like him dealing with his feelings, which was very fun. But I will read one that's actually very connected to the ones you just mentioned. That goes, then again, it's the whole Reagan program, isn't it? Dismantle the New Deal, reverse the effects of World War II, restore fascism at home and around the world, flee into the past. Can't you feel it? All the dangerous, childish stupidity. I don't like the way it came out. I want it to be my way. If the president can act like that, why not Brock? It's one of those passages that was like, you
Yeah.
could change one or two words in this. It could be now. It could be tomorrow. It could be yesterday. it's those are the parts of the book that I really loved, that I really connected with, because I think that the zaniness is part of the charm and it's fun, but it's not what actually sticks with me. Even with Inherent Vice, there is so much quiet sadness in that book, which also plays with. I mean, in that case, there's a much wider age gap or like time passage between the late 70s of that novel and the actual 2009 when he wrote it, compared to like 1984 and 1990. So I wonder if even more hindsight helped him in being more critical and less nostalgic in a way of something that's just much more recent in time, just like a couple of years earlier. But anyway, there are a lot of good passages in this book, even though we probably sounded more negative than we actually were during the actual conversation. What about a film scene? What's your favorite scene, or one, or a couple of your favorite scenes?
Oh man, I talked about so many that I really, really.
We could go through the whole movie, to be honest, and be like, yeah,
Oh
this is a good
man.
scene. This is another good scene.
Well, it was just there are some films who are like that are just like that. You watch and it's like, oh yeah, this one, oh this sequence here, you know. I do really like. I'll highlight the sequence again where Avanti just decides to like not go through with his orders, and he goes back. He unhandcuffs her and just starts shooting everybody. And we don't really know why. There's just something really shocking about that. There's something I really like about that. Not necessarily the violence, but as far as someone's motivations for why they would make that decision, choosing to do. I mean, from our perspective as the audience, which is the right thing to do, why is that the right thing for him? And we just don't know. And of course, I think that maybe those last 2 seconds before John Huganacker runs into the back of Infinity Chase's car, that's so satisfying. It's just like, oh my God, you've been outsmarted by a teenager. You're going to get murdered by a teenager. Like that I think that particular to me, it's not necessarily like saying that's satisfying to me, like in a grotesque way, but there's so many things that go wrong and people get, murdered or crushed or arrested. So many things can go wrong with people who are vulnerable. And in this scene in this movie, things actually went correctly where this big guy, this hired killer, got killed by a high schooler. And that's the way it should have gone. He was a horrible human being. So
it's one of very few films where you can feel for most of the time people do the right thing. It's like they're not making any mistakes. The only mistake Willa makes is lying about the phone. If she hadn't done that, it would have gone so much different. So much different.
Absolutely.
Again, no one's perfect. That's the other thing I like. It's she's still a teenager at the end of the day, and she's protecting her own freedom, essentially. Which I kind of like that's the ending of the movie, is the father embracing the new era, but letting her go on her own adventures without being overly protective. It's sweet.
Yeah. What are your favorite scenes?
I could say anything with Benicio del Toro. Big fan of. But honestly, like, people, rightfully so, have been praising the introduction of Chase Infinity. And it's one of those moments, it's like watching it in a cinema was just like, Steely Dan coming on and she's doing the karate moves. It's setting up the character, how she's evolved in 16 years, and it's just like a banger scene. For my money, honestly, he could have had the title card there. Just like title card.
You're right.
35 minutes into the movie, Steely Dan playing. It's like, yes, we're in, we're locked in. Okay, let's do this. But I really love, and we briefly touched on it before, but the hospital scene.
Oh my God, yes.
The rooftop chase looked insane. Like, I mean, not a chase per se, but just, like running through the rooftop with the gang of skateboarding Latinos.
I think those are real parkour guys. I'm sure you read more than me, but there was an interview with Paul Thomas Anderson. I think it was DiCaprio, maybe a Del Toro too, but they said like those were real parkour guys and they were so excited about it. And I think DiCaprio was saying specifically he wanted to do that because he wanted to show it's like these guys just miles ahead of him and him just struggling with everything until he falls off the building. That's just...
I don't know how they pull that off because it's I don't know, there's probably like digital stitching most likely with a stuntman, but the way they shot it where it actually looked like it's DiCaprio falling to the ground without hiding him with any props or like a Texas switch. It's just like falling to the ground and then just like stumbling out into the road. Great scene.
Well,
love that.
Yeah,
Latino Erit Tampan.
Yeah, what I read, they made it sound like he actually did that. Maybe I misinterpreted it. Misinterpreted what they said. Where I said, are they actually saying they did that to him? That there must have been wires or something? Because it is one shot, like you said. But someone corrected me and said, no, there's a video interview with him, and he said he didn't do it. And then they got their phone and they had to show me the whole interview. And I was like, you don't have to show me the whole thing. Like, I could take your word for it.
I believe you.
I believe you. Or it's like, are you just trying to make it seem like I made that up and I'm wrong? Like, it's someone I didn't know very well either. It was a bit awkward. But so I'm thinking you're probably right. It's digital stitching. But even if he didn't, and if the shot goes on, when he got tased, he had to hit the ground that hard. It was just like, oh God, could they? I hope they did that twice tops because that does not look like fun. I would have hated that because you have to fall like, and you can't do anything. You just land face first on the ground. It looks funny, but it's not fun to do.
Yeah, unless they have some sort of like mattress,
padding under it,
that they remove, whatever.
Because it was kind of dirty there, like maybe it was like soft sod he fell on or something. See, these are all the things that I get interested in. If I ever met anybody involved with production of stuff, I've probably like talked about weird shit like that. Where they're like, who cares?
But like the actual moment that I love is everything in the hospital right after with him that you mentioned as well. That sequence where, for me especially, all the times I watch this film, that's the lowest point that character ever is in. Is fucked up, is being captured. It could go so bad, and instead there's people who are actually united, which is essentially kind of like the good ending of the book, right? It's like through the power of individuals coming together as a community, you can face evil, you can face the government, and just like by being united, you can win the good fight. the good battle. And in that moment, you see, because of the network of Del Toro, that's a community. That's true people connected to each other and supporting each other. And there's a moment where you realize she calls him a bad hombre, she calls him Bob instead of Peter, and just like all those little
She
things.
knows. Yeah.
She
So
knows,
cool.
she knows.
Yes.
And him in the hospital room, and the lady just opens the door.
The nurse.
Just like the
Yeah.
nurse.
My
just
mom's
like,
a nurse,
go
so
through the
I
door.
my mom hasn't seen that yet, but I would want to talk to her about it. If she did see it, it's like, is that possible? Like, what would happen? But I'm just figuring, with the nurses and things like that, like they would know where all the security like cameras are and stuff like that. It's a really great scene, and I think maybe I talked about this in one of the other episodes where you and I were on, where I said that they had that low moment. It was in the screenplay where it's like it's just him at his rock bottom. He's crying. He thinks his daughter's gone forever. He's arrested. They ask him his name. He says Batman. Like, I forgot about that scene. Everything about him was so much funnier this time around. I just could not stop laughing. But they did talk to the people that lived in the place where they shot, and they said, okay, if we had someone who was in a hospital, how would we get them out? And that was actually the idea of the staff there, that this is something that actually could work and that it would be possible in real life. So I think that the woman in the scene with him was someone who was local. It's the same with the teacher. The teacher in the parent-teacher conference was someone who actually worked at the school. It was a lot of non-actors in this, too.
A lot of the film, even I remember reading the interrogator that they have from the military is not an actor. Is actually someone who did that or does that for his job.
Oh my
just part of the
God.
military interrogator. And you can feel him. He's just like so nonchalant in his presence and menace, where it doesn't feel like an actor faking that, right? Even all of the military people in this film, the way they handle firearms, like it feels like you're looking almost at documentary footage of a raid. It's that precise. It doesn't feel showy in the way they usually would if you had like Colin Farrell and whatever.
Yeah, if it's a
other actors
fantasy,
Howard.
it's just different. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I was actually wondering about that guy because the cast list is quite long and I never caught his name, but I just thought like that guy is so great at being an asshole. I was just like, he's so good. Every single time someone was sat down to talk to him, I just thought like, oh fuck, here we go.
Would they want to be them?
He's scary without being scary. He just knows that like you're just not going to get out of this situation okay. And the fact that he actually does that
Yeah.
is really uncomfortable. Like it's like I hope you're doing that for the right reasons and you're not like doing that to high school kids.
Who knows? But yeah, I love that scene. That's easily my favorite scene in the movie. Gives me joy, gives me hope. Ready or Not starts playing. He goes outside. There's Sensei. They take a selfie. They have a small beer, and they go.
He immediately
on
gives
their
him beers because
adventure.
I think he wants to bring him down. And I'm actually those two
Just calm.
actors. I'm so
Calm,
glad
Bob,
they were
calm.
able to finally be together in a film because I just thought like, they've never acted together. What would that look like? And here it is.
Dream
It's
combo.
quite great.
Dream combo.
Yeah.
And apparently, speaking of like the kind of like close things off as well. Before we keep going, like every scene of the movie, I can picture us doing that.
Yeah, this
but
is going to
even
be
Del
4
Toro's-
hours after all. No.
People are looking at like another hour at this point. No, but I remember reading that and hearing that Del Toro himself actively helped in thinking about this entire middle act of the movie because PTA himself was struggling in making it work narratively. He was like, yeah, like we need to get from this point to that point, and like we can have the action scene and a little chase, but like what's going to happen? And that's where talking with Del Toro, who was working on the Phoenician scheme, he was like basically doing this as a in between the breaks from filming with Wes Anderson,
Way.
which is insane.
Very different parts, I'm assuming, too.
Very different parts. I didn't like Phoenician scheme. I thought he was very good in it. I didn't really like the film, sadly. But yeah, he helped think about like the Harriet Tubman situation and developing this idea, and then PTA was scouting and they found the possibility of like doing those long takes, weaving in and out, and the rest is history. And I think that's to bring it to a close, it feels as spontaneous and intuitive as the writing of Pynchon in the book. In one way or another, it all came together, it all worked out. That yes, this is gonna be it for this conversation, this lovely conversation about One Battle After Another, and Vineland. Thank you, Hillary, for joining me on this adventure and deep dive into Pynchon. I'm sorry.
This Christmas adventure into
This Christmas
Pynchon.
adventure into Pynchon. Where can our listeners find your work if they want to keep up with your writing and your work online?
Yes, I am just working on doing my wrap-ups of like my favorite films of the year and my favorite documentaries of the year. And I always make a mixtape at the end of the year of music I listen to, which is going to be strange this year because I didn't actually listen to a lot of music. I mostly listen to like old radio shows from like the 30s and 40s. That's how I dealt with things this year. But so that's forthcoming. If you want to read about that stuff, in the next coming weeks, the place to find would either be like, if you go to a browser, you would just type in campsite.bio/Degelle, Degelle, or you can find me under the name Degelle on Letterboxd if you want to see my reviews or just various reactions to things. I'm very grateful to be included on these podcasts. People do follow me. I don't know how they find me, and sometimes I assume it's because they listen to these. So
The links in bio work in the show notes.
I guess so. People start following me, and it's like, how did they find me? And I have to think like, oh yeah, maybe it's a podcast. So if you are following me because of that, thank you. And yeah, just thank you. I am not used to being followed, so it's very flattering.
Well, I hope we can maybe do a small help in a small way with this.
Yes, every little bit counts,
You are worth following, and I do love those mixtapes you make. I listen to them whenever you share them. You're like, there's a new one coming. I was like, yes. It's like in between editing, because I'm editing so much work that doesn't necessarily require me to listen to it sometimes, or like doing admin. So it's good. It's good company. It's better than whatever nonsense generated playlists, things like Spotify or YouTube can recommend.
That's true. Oh, I'm going to plug you because recently you were able to upload your short Phantom Touch to YouTube. So do you want to go into that before you tell people where to find you?
Yeah. If people are interested, one of my short films from 2023 called Phantom Touch is now publicly available on YouTube and also Vimeo, but people have been really watching it on YouTube, which I'm not used to. I'm used to making weird short films that people don't watch or don't care about. People have been caring
me too.
about this
Oh my
one.
goodness. You and I have that in common.
Connected.
We are connected in our obscurity.
Yes. But surprisingly, this story about a long-distance relationship, which has a very unusual structure, shot entirely at 5 frames a second, is connecting with people. So go on YouTube, look for Phantom Touch from 2024, 2023, whatever. And yeah, I hope you enjoy that. You can follow me, of course, everywhere at NikiGran97, and you can follow this podcast on Instagram, primarily at Anatomy of Adaptation Pod, because stay tuned. This year, as anticipated in last year's last episode, talking about The Road with Raphael, I will also be doing some very short solo episodes occasionally in between throughout the year. The first one is coming out next week, where we'll be talking about Dostoevsky's White Nights, the Visconti adaptation, Notti Bianche, and the Robert Bresson Four Nights a Dreamer. And the week after that, I will be joined by the good Randy Burrows to talk about Goodbye to Berlin and the musical Cabaret. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we hope you have a lovely start to 2026, and we hope to see you soon. Goodbye.